Hi, I'm Rich Czyz, and I'm about to have a productive conversation with Mike Vardy.
Rich, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today for a productive conversation. We are going to be talking about your book, Autopilot: Practical Productivity for School Leaders. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to talk productivity today.
So, I have long noticed, as I know you have, based on what you've written, that one of the things that doesn't necessarily get brought up in school is this concept of being productive for school leaders, especially. To niche into that area. That, in my experience, and you definitely can expand on this because you've got a lot more, is that there's a lot of stuff that kind of feels old school that they do just because it's the way it's always been done, and time is a premium, right, for them. Of course, you can't manage time. You can only manage the things that exist within time. So, like your calendar, expectations, your relationship with time. What I appreciated about the book is that you're kind of leaning into that, right? You're saying, hey, listen, you're coming from a place of I know where you're at. This may seem daunting. Here's how it's not daunting. Like you've got, a quick start system, your five systems, which we're going to touch on. I'd love for you to kind of dive into why, not why did you write the book? Because this is a book that's sorely needed in the market, but what was the impetus for you to tackle not just this book project on, but almost like this mission that no one is really, that I've noticed, tackling?
Yeah, I think it's dealing with overwhelmed educators, right? And as a school leader myself, just talking with other school leaders, I think a lot of us are overwhelmed, and it was trying to figure out different systems to help us minimize exactly all those things that are. You kind of talked about it, but I like to talk about those nostalgia practices,
Mm.
right? So it's those things that we've always been doing, but for some reason they're holding us back, right? There's things that we shouldn't be doing anymore, and things that we, need to stop doing, essentially.
What do you think has kept school leaders from picking up the more general or generic productivity books? And because when you go through the book, let's be honest, there's stuff in here that I've seen before in other books presented, and you make no claim that they're yours at all. Like, just to be abundantly clear, it's almost as if you're saying, hey, listen, I know this is for you, and therefore you may have seen this before, but likely you haven't. How tricky was that for you to go, no, I know that this is out there, but they may not, and here's how I'm going to present it so that it's something that they can be, and right out of the gate, like overload. They won't be overwhelmed or overloaded by it. Uh, how do you present that to a group that number one is coming to you, or coming to the game, I guess, with these tools that are accessible to them, but it's just out of reach?
Yeah, I think for a lot of school leaders, they may not necessarily know about these things. I like to consider myself a productivity geek, right? I'm listening to all the podcasts. In the book, you'll see Getting Things Done referenced. You'll see Cal Newport referenced. You'll see all the people who are out there doing everything with productivity in outside of education.
Mhm.
And I think it's bringing that to school leaders. And there's a lot of people who don't necessarily listen to those things, don't necessarily read those books. It is about hopefully making it accessible to them. So, I like to think that my writing style is easy to read. Hopefully, it comes in small bites of things that you could start tomorrow if you wanted to. You reference the first five systems, right? Things that an educator can do tomorrow to make their day a little bit easier, to become a little bit more efficient. So I think it is about getting that message out to school leaders, getting them to understand that it doesn't have to be, this entire system that you're trying to implement all at once, but it is small steps and small systems that can help you to be more successful and more efficient.
Well, I like this quick start guide that I got when I got the book in the mail, that kind of goes through the 5 systems, like each system for each day. You know, w when you're looking at this, obviously, this is a template. I know templates are lovely to see in school and so on and so forth. Kids, when I talk to kids about, like, theming their time and attention paths and stuff, they're learning that in school incidentally, not intentionally. Like, it's time to go to this class. So therefore, you're focusing on your energy on this very singular thing as opposed to separating out. Same thing with when a teacher is present in the classroom, they are focused on that act of teaching. They're not thinking about, well, they're not doing the other administrative efforts around it. So how important is it for you as someone who's a school leader themselves to say, hey, I'm going to lean into the practices that we're familiar with to pass this on? Basically, you're doing what an educator would do, right?
Yeah, it's teaching, right? It's about getting those systems out there to everybody else. And I know even in our building, it's modeling that for not only our staff members but for our students as well. So, I think there's this misconception amongst a lot of people that productivity equals busyness, right? It's the checklist mentality that everything's going to go on the checklist, and once I check it off, I'm done, and I can move on to the next thing. And I think part of the struggle there is that, everything that appears on a checklist doesn't have the same priority. And for school leaders, I think that's the toughest piece. We do a lot of fighting of fires on a daily basis and not getting to some of the meaningful stuff. So that's where I really wanted Autopilot to kind of talk to school leaders about how to stop fighting fires so much, and how to start doing some of that more meaningful work. Um, Really prioritizing strategy over reaction, because I
Mhm.
think a lot of our day is reaction. So trying to be more proactive and have those systems in place so that you can get to that meaningful work.
So what we're going to do is as we go through the book, because it's divided up into several strategies, the autopilot strategies, right? Chapter 5 through all the way to, basically chapter 11. So I want to go through the first one really quickly. And what we're
Sure.
going to do is I'm going to ask you for each one, which of the strategies like you think has proven. I'll change it up every time, but in this instance, like, so for chapter 5, start with the basics: email solutions and communication overload. Oh my goodness! Like, you right out of the gate, you're coming in hot with the thing that is that is likely the bane of existence. So when you're looking at this, when the idea of inbox zero, of course, comes up, people have a misconstrued idea of what that is. What is one of those strategies when it comes to email solutions and communications overload that you think is probably the easiest for someone that's reading this book to grasp and sustain?
Yeah. So the number one strategy I would take for the communication piece, as far as the inbox, is the idea of the boat. So I'm a huge fan of Jaws. I have my Jaws water bottle here.
Hmm.
Um, but I took that line from Jaws, right? You're going to need a bigger boat. And the idea of a boat in this case is blocked off answering time. So for a lot of school leaders, they live and they drown often in their inbox all day long. The inbox is, unfortunately, it's a lot of other people's to-dos, right? They're giving you those tasks, they're making them yours. And so I specifically try to stick to 3 blocked off answering times during the day. So I will do one boat in the morning, first thing when I get there, or if I'm dealing with something else, I might do it right after our students arrive. Another one midday, and then another one at the end of the day. So I think from a sustainability standpoint, if people can get into those timeframes, and it might be different for everyone,
Right.
right? You might have a different time frame that you're looking at, but if you could stick to and sustain those timeframes, I think that helps you with the inbox piece a million times over. So if you're only in it a handful of times a day, dealing with the true major emails that are in there that you have to. I'm also a big fan of delegating. So anything that I'm finding during those 3 boats, I'm trying to pass along to somebody else to take care of. I think if people can stick to those times within their inbox, that would make their life a million times easier. And I think it is sustainable, right? I think if you just get in the habit of, I'm only going to check once in the morning, once in the afternoon, whatever it may be. Some of the, the comes from the Tim Ferriss
Yeah.
strategy, right? Of in terms of when to check and how to check. But I like to check those 3 times during the day. The morning, I'm addressing the things that came in overnight. The midday, I'm anything in the morning, and at the end of the day, I'm crossing things off, getting some emails sent out, and then moving anything over to the next day for the following day. So
That's a great one, and you're right. Like, I mean, I haven't even checked email today, and it's what, as we're recording this, 11 o'clock my time, and it's it allows you to be present, right? And you have to test those waters too to kind of use the boat analogy. You have to test.
love it.
You have to figure out. Okay, I'm going to give you what I think because for mastering your time and energy, because we've already talked about it. This idea of the quick guide for your systems for each day of the week, theming days. That's one of the theming your time is one of the tenets of, like, one of the aspects or elements of time crafting, which I talk about. To me, it seems like a natural fit in this realm because of the way that, like, even my son who's going to high school, he's like, okay, so today I have block. This is the order that things happen in, and this is how it works. And to me, we kind of lose that when we leave education, like when we leave school, because there's the thematic elements of life, just everything collides. So we have to kind of almost relearn that. How does theming days I mean, you've obviously given it a try, but how would that work for someone who's, say, looking to do it as a school leader?
Yeah, so I think it's managing those pieces and batching them, right? So the one piece I talk about in the book is the communication piece, and I send out a weekly newsletter to our staff that just updates them on different dates, schedules, curriculum issues, things like that.
Hmm.
I also send out one every week or every other week to our parents, but I will batch those all at once. So I will sit down, I'll close my door, so that hopefully I'm not distracted by any of those fires hitting my desk. And uh, I use S'more newsletters, so it's very simple to use. It's very cut and paste. I'll create one newsletter upon another and just batch those until I have 8 weeks of newsletters that go out at a time. I will schedule those emails. The beautiful part about that is the S'more newsletters are live. So if there's anything that comes up later on that I then need to add to a newsletter before it goes out to everybody, I could just throw that in there and it doesn't change anything. So I think that batching piece really helps me to kind of get ahead of the game. I think in terms of everything else that we have on our plate as well. For a school leader, my goal is to get into classrooms on a daily basis to see what's going on in the classrooms. So I think batching that work as well, to give teachers feedback when I'm going into the classrooms. If I can, block 2 hours off of my schedule, I can hit, 10 to 15 classrooms in the morning and get all of those things done at once. So to me, it just makes sense when you're trying to stop that firefighting piece to get everything done at once. So it's really the same for anybody who's trying to improve their productivity.
Well, and I think the other thing too is that when we use that term firefighting, we misconstrue what that actually means. If you're fighting a fire, not it doesn't necessarily mean you're spraying everything willy nilly. Sometimes you let things burn like a firefighter would, so you can properly attack the other thing. Right? You have to assess. It's not just that you come in, with a fire hose and just go crazy. There's a strategic element to it. Conquering procrastination and perfectionism. There's several different strategies you offer in here. Which one is the one that took you some time to, for lack of a better term, perfect, so that it would work for conquering procrastination and perfectionism?
So I guess probably the biggest piece that I talk about in there, and it's a struggle still, is the idea of the phone, right? As the
Yeah.
as the biggest distraction that we have. And it's something I still struggle with when I'm at home, when I'm at work. So I do talk in there about the idea of the phone jail, and it actually started as a joke with my dad. So we had another family member who was constantly on their phone during holidays,
Hmm.
and my dad came over, for a holiday, and he said, "Here, I bought a phone jail." And it's this little cage that you can lock up the phones in, and it has a little tiny lock. And we actually started using that in my house. I have teenagers, right? So it was the perfect, for dinner. Like everybody, put your phone in there. We didn't even lock it, but it was enough to know the phone was in there. It was staying in there during our dinner so that we were uninterrupted. And I brought that idea into the school. And I think from my own standpoint, it protects me from my own phone. So if I know I'm working on something, I may put my phone in there so that I'm not distracted.
Right.
And I think that's probably the biggest piece that, as far as focus goes, everyone struggles with. It's, not just school leaders, but parents, and any type of business people out there.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, in our schools up here, like they take the phones from the kids when they go into the classroom, so the kids can have I don't know if they do that where you're at, but certainly here. And so it's interesting because they can model. The kids will also model the behavior after the teachers. So if those, like for example, my son's English class, he actually said I need a note and notebook because I can't always like to take notes because they take my phone. And I'm like, that's fine. That's great. But it's interesting to see if the teacher also has their phone not with them as well, because that modeling of behavior, you get that ingrained early on. I think it can be super helpful. It's really hard. Like, I mean, there was I recently shared we're recording this in early December, but I shared a sculpture that was in our city called Modern Man Does Research. And it's a metal sculpture where a guy is sitting on a toilet with his phone and a cigarette in his mouth and he's scrolling. And it's like, even the most human act that we all can do, we are compromising or disrupting with this idea of, and my wife's even said, like, she's in the healthcare industry, Eastern medicine. She's like, there's health issues related with sitting doing that, so it's interesting that the concept, and to be clear, as we're going through this, and we'll kind of move into the idea of the metaphor of flight and stuff. um there's a lot of the stuff that you hear. How do you, as a leader, um for someone who says, oh, we're going to get a phone jail, they're like, oh, like there's the eye rolling, there's this, there's that, as opposed to this understanding that we all are we're all susceptible to this.
yeah, I think we see it a ton with our students, and it's that idea of being uncomfortable. And most of our students now are at the point where the moment they feel any discomfort at all, they're picking up their phone,
Mm,
right? And we see kids as young as first or second grade who have phones, and in our school, we have a rule where they're kept in the book bag,
yeah.
right? So if you have one, it needs to stay in the book bag all day. Um, but there are a number of high schools. I actually work in New Jersey, but there are a number of high schools and middle schools in New Jersey who have adopted the idea of having kids lock up their phones when they start the day and they get them back at the end of the day. And I think in the short time that has happened here, they have seen some changes as far as behaviors, focus, all of those different things, the academic learning that's taking place as well. For me, it comes down to that modeling piece. So when I talk about the phone jail, if I'm having a meeting in my office and it is something that we want to be an important meeting, I may put my phone in there first and then offer for others to do that as well. Because I think that modeling piece and letting them know that, hey, listen, I'm doing it, impacted by it. I don't want you sitting on your phone while we're trying to have this meeting as well. So I think that modeling piece is huge in our schools and, for staff, students, and families as well, so that everybody kind of gets that message that, we want to be intentional with our time. And I think that's the biggest piece.
So you mentioned that David Allen gets mentioned in the book, who, obviously the getting things done methodology. You mentioned Cal Newport as well, who is an educator, actually, at the post secondary. But I can't help but think when I'm looking at the David Allen piece and the horizons of focus and the runway and all that stuff, we've got the metaphor of the flight that's going on here. Why? It seems to me, I'm gonna try to project an answer. I don't know if it's right or not, but it seems to me
Sure.
that if you can wrap a narrative around some kind of theme, it makes it stickier for teaching, right? Like metaphor and those kind of things work because number one, it gives you something to hold on to, and number two, especially the metaphor of like autopilot and flight and so on and so forth, you're going great distances with this. If you don't have to think about it as much once you do it all, because when we're on I mentioned before we hit record, my son and I have been to your neck of the woods before, around near where you are. We're both New Jersey Devils fans. Go Devils! And but when we're flying from say Vancouver to New York, there's a part of that flight where it's on autopilot. Like the pilot is there manning it. It's not like he leaves, or she leaves, but they are there and to make sure things are still working, but there's systems in place and there's protocols in place that are allowing the autopilot to do what it does well. I see all this and I'm like, this makes sense. Is what else? First off, am I spot on with why you framed it this way, or at least somewhat right? And secondly, how important was it for you to create that kind of framing, considering who you're talking to in this book?
Yeah, so I think you're definitely right in getting toward that point. It is about building those systems so that the systems run. Um, One of the taglines that I love to use in the book is find a way to run the school before the school runs you,
Yeah.
right? So it is getting those systems in place for educators, and it's not only the building leader, because often like I'm the school principal in an elementary school. I have no other administrators that I work with, so I'm the only person there who, technically is in charge of everything. So there's a lot of things that get added to my plate where I'm like, I don't understand why I'm doing this. There's probably somebody else who's much better at doing this than I am. And I will try to delegate as much as I possibly can. But in terms of the autopilot messaging, I think it is much easier when, some of my other books that I've written in terms of educational, professional development, things like that, try to wrap it around some idea that people are going to connect with. In this piece, I wrote a lot about me as the captain, right? Trying to
Mhm.
lead you to those productivity pieces. So it kind of made sense to me to write about it from that flight idea, where we're all on a plane, trying to head in one direction, which hopefully is being efficient. And I think if I can kind of use that to guide people toward it, I think that was probably the idea behind it.
How important and even challenging is it for you in the role that you have to allow people to, because you talk about different tools and such in different ways, you obviously offer a lot of strategies. How challenging and or important is it for you in the role you have to allow people to work subjectively towards the objectives that you're trying to do within the walls of the school?
Yeah, so one of the big pieces I talked in there about is trade-offs, right? And I think when you are going this route as a school leader, you do have to accept trade-offs. So there have been times in the past where I have delegated to somebody and been upset with the way they've done something, even though their end goal was the same as my end goal, but I didn't necessarily like the way that they approached the end goal.
Hmm.
Um, I think as a school leader, sometimes you have to give up that control. I feel like I'm pretty good at that. I've dealt with other school administrators who are not necessarily good at giving up that control. I think that's a hard piece for a lot of people to deal with and to understand. But I think it does come down to if we're delegating, we're letting people do things the way that they need to do them or they want to do them. So, I use the term delegate and elevate in the book. And I truly believe that there are a lot of teachers and educators who I've worked with before who have gone on to, be their own school principal or assistant principals or whatever positions they may be in. But I do think that when we give people the opportunity, and not only staff members, but also students as well, give them the opportunity to take ownership over those things in the school. I think that helps everybody to be more efficient. There's a story, and I believe I wrote about it in the book, but I had a student approach me on the playground one day as I was leaving the building to attend a meeting outside the building. And he basically asked me who was going to be in charge while I was gone. And my answer was everyone, right? And I believe that that's truly the power of productivity, is that once everybody kind of gets on that same page, everybody's taking ownership for everything that's happening within that world.
So as we kind of get close to wrapping up here, one of the things that I've come across when I've talked to, both people who are educators and those, even my own kids when they're in school, um, I remember reading the Getting Things Done for Teens with, and I think that Mike it was, I think Mike Williams did it with David, if I remember correctly. And I remember giving it to my daughter and then my daughter's friend. And they were like, this sounds amazing in some respects, but impractical in others. Like, there's so much going on, in in a young person's mind, right? Like, I know that I've talked to people about this and they said, get the kids while their brains are still super elastic, like talk about that kind of stuff. But there's so much going on inside of both, elementary, middle, and high school with kids. I guess my question around this is, obviously the teachers and the leaders that are in the school have a lot going on, and they're there. Their purpose there is to educate, is to nurture, teach, and we can get into semantical arguments around, like, some people parents don't look at it that way. They do, but they're like, well, the kids are at school. The teacher's job is to educate, and then they come home and they do whatever they want, kind of thing. Again, I'm being very general here. How do you keep how does someone get started with, like, I'm going to systematize, put these things on autopilot, but not at the expense of the larger reason that we are here? Because I think people can get caught up in the doing and the orchestrating and the tinkering and fiddling with the systems, whether it's a piece of software or a way of operating, and then they lose sight of the reason that they're doing it in the first place.
Yeah, I think that does come down to that meaning piece, right? And it's trying to figure out what is meaningful for the school leader or for the educators in the building, right? And as an educator myself, and I will always say this, my mentor when I first became a teacher told me that every decision you ever make has to be in the best interest of a child, right? And that is something I've tried to live by throughout my entire 20 plus years in education. Is we're making decisions in the best interest of each of the children that walks into our school every day. I want them to walk out as better learners, as better people, more kind, more caring. And I think we have to have that vision for what that goal is prior to figuring out whatever the systems are, right? And I think if you look at any of the systems or anything that's out there, right, from David Allen down to what Cal suggests, different strategies that you or I are even talking about, is it's different for every person, right? Productivity is going to be different for every person. And I think if you have that goal of, okay, here's what I'm trying to do every day. I'm trying to make this a better place for kids in our building. And how can I do that? Well, there's a ton of systems that we can put in place. They're going to work for me. They may not work for the principal down the road. They may not work for somebody in a different setting. So I think it is about first determining what that major goal is that you're trying to accomplish, and then building those systems around that goal.
Someone picks up the book Autopilot. What's the first step they can take to start putting things on autopilot?
Yeah. So I wrote this in the book. I said at some point I'm going to be sitting on a podcast and somebody is going to ask me the question, what's the most important thing that you could take away from the book, and how to put things on autopilot. And I think that answer is elimination, right? So I think you have to look at your tasks, whatever you're doing on a daily basis, and figure out what it is that you can eliminate, right? So I talked earlier about that nostalgia piece. There's a lot of things that we do in education. There's a lot of things we do in society because we've always done them. But the question I try to ask is, are they providing any value? So if there's something that I can take off of my plate, that's the first thing that I want to do. And that would be the first thing that I would encourage anybody who's picking up Autopilot to do is take a look at what you're doing, how you're spending your time on a daily basis, and eliminate something. Find something that's very low value that can either be delegated to somebody, can be automated by a technological system, can be automated by another human in the building, right? Get rid of those things that are on your plate that you shouldn't be doing so that you can spend time to do the more important things.
I'd be remiss in not following up with this question since you mentioned a technological tool that can help you eliminate. AI is becoming a very, very popular and polarizing uh, phenomenon. Let's call it that. And
Sure.
it's permeating all aspects of society. Generative AI, we're going to talk about here, because AI has been, for people who, speaking of AI, like a lot of autopilot stuff that's technological is done by AI.
Yeah.
In fact, you and I are probably going to get into our cars at some point to go somewhere, and we're going to say, how do we get there? And we're going to ask Google Maps or Apple Maps to help us. And as we're driving, we will make decisions based on what it says, but we may also go, oh, you know what? I don't want to go down this street. It's not the most, it says go this way. I'm going to turn, and it recalculates for you on the fly. So to say I don't use AI is a very all or nothing statement. And anyone who listens to the show knows how I feel about absolutes. So that actually is a nice lending into the use of AI in not in education per se, because we know that there's a lot, that's a whole subject that isn't even related to what we're talking about here. But for someone who is looking to do this kind of thing, put things on autopilot, figure out where their blind spots are, look at what to eliminate. Because, what are your thoughts around that? Knowing that there is such a interesting opportunity and potential there, but also plenty of pitfalls that can come with it.
Yeah. So I'm actually serving currently on my district's AI team. So we have a committee that we have formed recently to kind of look at policy for our school district and uses for students, for staff, all of those kind of pitfalls. And what's really nice about our committee is we have a lot of people who are very pro AI, but we also have some dissenters who are bringing the opposite viewpoint, which I love because we've been able to have some very meaningful conversations about um, how this should be used in schools. So I know I use AI all the time in terms of minimizing some of my workflows, right?
Sure.
So sending emails, making sure those are going out clean and saying what I need to say within those emails, communications, letters, all those different things that I'm using AI for. But now the biggest discussion is and I'm at the elementary level, right? So our students are pre-K through fifth grade, but how students should be using those things. And I think the biggest piece that we kind of talk about is there's this saying out there of the human in the loop, right? You want that human to constantly be involved in the loop of AI. We have kind of modified that to human in the lead, right? That you are the person who is dictating what that prompt is. You're telling AI what it is that you want it to do. And then you're on the back end making sure that what comes out of that is something that is suitable to share, right? Whether we're looking to see if there's any bias along with it, or so. I think in terms of AI, um, it's almost inevitable, right? At this point, where we're living in that world, and like you said,
It's here to stay.
yeah, people use it and don't even realize they're using it, right? It's just operating in the background, and I think for a lot of our systems, um, and especially in education, at least in the United States, we're often always playing catch up with new things, right? So I always like to say we're like 2 to 3 years behind everything that's actually really meaningful, right? But I think trying to get ahead of this now as a school district, as an education system is important because, a lot of times they're more advanced than our teachers are in terms of some of this stuff. So I do think we need to get ahead of it and really teach kids how to use it as well.
Well, and honestly, a lot of the strategies you talk in this book could be plugged into Chat GPT or Claude or any of them and say, hey, I need your help with this. Can you help me? And I mean, it can help with things like elimination, looking at how to batch your tasks, like figuring out what words resonate. Like there are ways, and I love what you said about human in the lead instead of human in the loop. I think that's more. It's not as passive, right? Which I think is the concern. That's the biggest concern I see with it is this passive element to it. And what I think that we'll have this conversation in 5 years. We'll come back around and you're like, oh, you know what? Like I've added a lot of these to my system via generative AI, and it's allowed me. This is the thing that the kicker that people, may miss the boat on, or maybe don't focus on enough, especially if they're coming it from a antagonistic way, is if you get generative AI to do the things that get in your way of doing the primary element of your calling, your vocation. So in this case, the child, teaching, informing, story, all of that. We all know that some of the best teacher stories that we've read or heard about, Dead Poet Society is a good example. Like that couldn't have been done by AI. But like the system stuff that he was, the Robin Williams character was trying to teach could not be done by AI. However, the systematic stuff that he was circumventing certainly could. And you saw the difference between the students as a result. So I think that if we focus on that, then that allows humans to do the things only humans can do. We just need to figure out how to make sure it doesn't circumvent or compromise that. So it's a very nuanced thing, as you pointed out.
Yeah, and I think to go back to something you said a few minutes ago, right? That all or nothing mentality of, we're gonna, some districts are gonna jump into AI and just go fully to one side, right? And just use everything all the time and run into problems. And we were having a lot of conversations. We actually had a committee meeting yesterday with our AI committee, and we were talking about a lot of the legalities in terms of policy and what that looks like, and how do we prevent certain things from happening. And I think it is taking that dip in the water a little bit, making sure that we are being intentional in our choices with that, as with anything else, as with our schedules, all of those things, just being intentional and trying to make decisions in the right way, so that number one, we're protecting kids, keeping them safe, and making sure that they are doing things the way they're supposed to be doing as well.
So it's like Hal Jordan, a test pilot, the Green Lantern. He's a test pilot. That's what we're doing, right? When it comes to AI. And
Exactly.
we just have to have the will to stick it through, no matter what. Rich, this has been a great conversation. I highly encourage everybody to pick up the book, Autopilot, Practical Productivity for School Leaders. Rich, where can people pick up the book, and where can they keep up with the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so everything's on Amazon, so you can find the copy of the book there. And my website is 4o'clockfaculty.com, FOUR o'clockfaculty.com. So all of my work is there. There's probably over 1,500 blog posts. So you'll find a lot of my information there. Anything new coming out about the book, you can find there as well.
Rich, thanks so much for having a productive conversation with me today.
All right, thank you.